Do you like movies and games also? Listen, so much more they all know. Vice, Pyro, and friends, welcome to Corrective Consciousness.
Welcome to Corrective Consciousness, episode 49, the podcast about our lives and love of pop culture. I am your host, Vice the Bold, and this is...
Pyro Jack Frost.
And Old Man Stompy.
I was about to say Lotus Prince, because he usually goes twice, second, so...
Can I be Vice the Bold next time?
If you want your turn to be skipped, yes.
Oh. Finally, I know the pain that is Vice.
Lotus dropped off for this week, but we have some really exciting things to talk about, and we did a fair amount of gaming together this week, which is happy to talk about. So,
some of us,
yeah, some of us, that's for sure. But Pyro, why don't you get us started?
All right, I'll go as one of the people who wasn't with the whole group,
the core group here.
So I have a few things to mention, some big, some small. Quickly, I want to mention that I kind of started my second playthrough of Persona 5.
Is there an advantage
I'm not
to that?
Far. Yeah, there's some things there's like a secret boss you can only do in New Game Plus. There's a demon you can only fuse in New Game Plus. Plus, I need it for the rest of the achievements. So it's really just for completion's sake. I'm only in the first dungeon now, but I'm going to slowly go through it again because I do want to get everything that it has to offer.
Now, Megaten games tend to have some pretty heavy stuff tied to higher difficulties. Are you playing this at a higher difficulty? Is that what you're doing?
They don't really have a lot of stuff on higher difficulties, just that the game is harder, usually much harder.
Well, usually people love it in hard mode, though, right?
I don't usually play it in hard mode. Yeah. I usually have fun being powerful, so
I'm not a fan of that.
Shit on.
I'm not a fan of that.
So yeah, I'm just going to go through that normal again, get everything, maybe do more than just get everything, maybe like get more so than I need to just because. But one of the achievements I had to get is unlocking, or I guess fusing all the demons, so that's going to take a little while. But I'll probably just use a guide for that because I'm not... The fusion system can get kind of complicated if you really sit down and try to do it.
Gotcha. Do you use a guide for that, or do you just do it on your own from memory?
For the fusion, no, I use a guide.
Yeah,
because
pretty much have
also in the base game, I was just taking personas and fusing them, and whatever I get, cool. As long as they have the spells that I need, I didn't really care what they are. But in terms of fusing specific personas, I would use a guide because otherwise it can get kind of complicated.
Makes sense.
So if I remember, now that the Persona 4 had like a fusion that required like 12 personas to get at the very end. Is there anything that complicated?
I'm not sure what the ultimate persona requires. The most that I know of requires 6.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I don't know if whenever I get there, which might be a while, I'll let you all know when I find that out. But right now, it just seems like the max is 6. And so since I stopped that and I was waiting for, since I beat all those other Vita games that I was playing, Severed and Virtue's Last Reward, I started playing Dragon Quest Builders again. I beat the first chapter and I started the second one, and I kind of put it down because you kind of start from scratch again. And not that I really mind because I kind of just finished the first chapter after having a long break, but it was kind of draining on me I like Minecraft. I like Dragon Quest Builders because it kind of adds a layer on top of Minecraft. But it wasn't really something I liked doing on the train.
Yeah.
So I picked up World of Final Fantasy, which is Final Fantasy Pokemon, basically. Yeah. It has more to it, though. It's really cool because I mentioned this on a previous podcast when I played the demo, but you basically stack your characters on top of each other. So there's large creatures, medium creatures, and small creatures. And you stack them up, large on the bottom, medium in the middle, small on top. And your character, the two main characters, they're twins, and they can become either medium or large. And you just stack the rest of for this conversation, let's just say Pokemon, because it's easier to say. You stack the rest of the Pokemon to fill that whole stack. But it's actually cooler because than Pokemon. There's more to it. Like Pokemon's been going on for a while.
Sure.
And they don't really change the formula that much when you really think about it. They have mega evolutions, sure. They have items that the Pokemon can hold, but the core gameplay elements don't change that much. And that's why I like this game as a change to it, because first of all, your Pokemon have they're called mirages. So actually, I'll call them mirages. They have what are called mirage boards, which think of a sphere grid from 10. They're a lot smaller, but basically you gain 1 point per level, and you can put them in their sphere grid to unlock new abilities or increase their stats. Plus, you can actually unlock new transmogrifications to these mirages to change them into different sizes or different mirages themselves. For instance, what's a good example? There's one mirage you get that's like a small little puppy dog thing, and called like a white knack, and it can transmogrify into Fenrir, which is its kind of, you could say, evolution. But also you can transmogrify to the black knack, so the white one is more like ice based, whereas the black one's more fire based. You can only do that at save points, but you can basically change their forms as you need, so you don't need to have a large repertoire of all the different mirages in the game. You really only need the ones that can transmogrify into all the other ones, let's say. So it's pretty neat. I'm having fun with it. It's, like I said, it's like Pokemon, collecting them all. It's something new in that sense. But I really like Final Fantasy. Basically, other than the Mega 10 games, is probably my second favorite series.
What's the end goal in that game? Like, what are you supposed to be doing?
So it starts off, the twins wake up. I'm very early in the game, so I couldn't give spoilers if I wanted to. Basically, they wake up and they've lost their memories. They apparently used to be the best Mirage Masters in the world, let's say, but they don't know what happened. And it's basically them exploring the world, trying to find why they don't have their memory, and kind of saving people as they go, kind of learning more about the world. And I kind of saw some story where there's the evil army, let's say. There's 3 knights from the army that I've been seeing scenes with, and I don't know what their connection is with the twins, but I have a feeling it's going to be something familial or something like that.
Well, that's pretty cool. I've never seen a game that used amnesia as a plot device.
I know, right? And they're twins who both have amnesia, so double duty there. But it's like the end goal now is just kind of moving from point A to point B and kind of learning more about the world as I go. But I feel like there's going to be more overarching story stuff going on as I go through the story, what I'm doing now. But the other cool thing about it actually is you unlock throughout the story champion medals, and the champions are all characters from the other Final Fantasies. Like I currently have, as a free download, you can get Balthier from 12.
Oh, cool.
And Sephiroth. I don't need to mention which one he's from because I'm pretty sure everyone knows. And I also have the Warrior of Light from 1, and Refia, who's from 3.
But only
from
but only
right? Yes.
only the DS version of 3.
Yes, only the DS, and same with Warrior of Light is really only Dissidia,
right,
where he has the actual name.
Gotcha.
So you can summon them in battle. Basically, you have like a gauge that increases, and you get stars, and you need to expend these stars to summon the characters, and it's really cool. It's kind of just fan service, but I'm loving it for the fan service so far. Basically, on the world map, I can ride a chocobo or have a cactuar follow me around, so it's pretty neat, and it's pretty good for what it does. And about my love for Final Fantasy, I'll kind of mention that I am now playing Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood. It came out, I got early access to it. Although I'm still in the 2.0, 2.x content, so I can't even do the Stormblood stuff. But I did unlock the Red Mage, and I'm loving the Red Mage. So, for anyone who doesn't know, in the Final Fantasy world, the Red Mage kind of is a jack of all trades. And those are the kind of characters that I love, just because I don't like to make decisions. So, they can do a little bit of white magic, a little bit of black magic, a little bit of melee. The way that Final Fantasy XIV implements it is actually really cool. So the mechanic of the Red Mage is they're mainly a caster, and they have 2 bars, white magic and black magic. And different spells you cast will increase their white or black magic gauge, and you have to make sure that they're pretty close to each other. So if you cast a black magic spell, the next one you should cast is white magic, because if one is higher than the other, then it's harder to gain the lower one.
Gotcha.
And you want them to go evenly, because once you've hit, like, let's say 80 in both those, then you basically dash. There's a spell you cast or ability you use that you dash in and do melee moves on the enemy, using up your black and white gauge. And then once they're all used up, you have an attack that basically is a backstep, an attack and a backstep. So basically, it's lots of movement. So you're casting from a distance, and once your gauges are high enough, you go in for the melee attacks, and once you use all that up, you backstep, and you go back to caster. And it's really cool, because it's like you juggling your black and white magic, and then going into melee when you need to do that, and then backing off. It's relatively easy in terms of a DPS class in Final Fantasy XIV, but it's really fun. I think that's what I love about it the most, is whether it's easy or hard, it's really fun to play, and I like the moving around.
Mm-hmm. So you're lucky that you get to play it at all. I know that my sister-in-law, she's a pretty hardcore Final Fantasy XIV player. She says that she logged on the day that the early access started at like 5 or 6 in the morning when it debuted, and then played for a little bit, and then left to take a break, and then when she came back, she was in a queue with like 500 people. Just could not get in for the rest of the day.
It's actually, that's surprising, because when I went on Saturday, I think around 1, it was a 500 queue, and I know you might have just been saying some random number, but I had like a 600 queue, and it really only took me 20 minutes to get in. So I think that's kind of surprising. But yeah, there's been bad queues for this, because a lot of people are getting back on who haven't played in a while.
I've also been told that because of the load, the Stormblood storyline is like literally not possible to complete right now. Like, there's a specific instance that the server isn't even trying to put people in. So nobody knows what comes after level 60 right now.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm lucky that I'm still in the 2.x content, because I'm actually able to get in and work on that.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm going to keep playing that. Now that I'm done with Persona 5, that's going to be my main PS4 game, is Final Fantasy XIV, and my main Vita game will be World of Final Fantasy, so lots of Final Fantasy right now. The last things I want to mention, and these are going to be kind of quick, so we can move on to Old Man Stompy, but I saw 2 movies recently. One, I saw Wonder Woman in theaters, and I want to say that I do agree that it's a great movie, but I don't think it's necessarily as great as everyone's saying.
Yeah.
It is a good movie, though. I will not diss that at all, and I won't mention. I don't really want to talk about why I think it's good or not. I don't want to start a whole conversation about it, but overall, it's a great origin story, and I really like how they show Wonder Woman as being a badass.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the main thing that I want to mention that I don't like is still a lot of her story revolves around men helping her in some way. Which, they wanted this to be like a feminist movie, but the movie wouldn't be anything if it wasn't for the male characters, and I don't like that.
Mm.
Like, she wouldn't have never have left the island if not for Steve Trevor. She wouldn't have been anything if Zeus didn't give her life, when I heard in the comics, like, sometimes they say that Athena gave her life, or the other goddesses gave her life. I don't know why they're making it have to be Zeus.
Well, there's multiple origin stories for her, and it changes all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
Sometimes it's as they said, that they made her from clay, which is kind of funny, because they actually made reference to a real origin of hers. But sometimes they say that she's Zeus's daughter. Well, I mean, you can't really say that, like it's the same thing as like Zeus giving her life. That's her father, but she also has a mother too.
Yeah,
she was given birth, so she was birthed. So she's birthed like any other person is, supposedly. But I can see what you're saying. But I do like her. In this movie, she wasn't playing like the innocent idiot archetype, the pretty innocent girl archetype, like in Fifth Element, let's say, you have like an attractive woman who's essentially a baby. She's like,
she was more of a teenager, I would say, in this movie, but yeah. she was still naive a little bit, but she wasn't like completely unaware of what was going on.
Correct. You know, she like for instance, you know, her reading the books on sex is actually like a pretty cool part that they put into it. So I thought that was a good nod. I think it's a good movie, but I mean, it's a little Deus Ex Machina, like in a very literal sense at the very end of the movie. And I never like that. I like clever solutions to problems in movies. That's the way it, or suffering in order to accomplish a goal, or losing something in order to accomplish a goal. You know, rather than just being able to solve it.
But I mean, like, other than some like minor complaints, like, I wouldn't consider these major complaints.
No,
like,
it was
the movie
enjoyable.
itself was fun.
It's enjoyable,
and I had a good time. And I guess it helps that I don't know much about Wonder Woman, so I can't bring in my biases or my assumptions. But I had fun, and I do recommend, even though I'm not saying it's as good as everyone's saying it is, I do recommend people seeing it. It was still good enough that I would recommend everyone going to see it. It's a lot. I think the fact that they injected humor into it made it a lot better than some of the other DC movies.
Like any humor at all?
Yes. And actually, because of Wonder Woman, because some of the previews of Wonder Woman, I watched Blade Runner this week too. I wanted to go back to it to kind of get ready for 2049, and I had to say that Blade Runner is a weird movie.
Oh, it sure is. Blade Runner is not a crowd-pleasing movie. It's depressing in a lot of ways.
I remember when I first watched it.
It has a bleak outlook on humanity, for sure.
I remember when I first watched it, I think I was doing something else while watching it, so I wasn't paying complete attention, and I was like, I have no idea what's going on. So this time when I was watching it, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to pay attention to everything. And at the end of the movie, I'm like, I still don't think I understand everything that happened.
Yeah, it's one of those movies where it definitely really helps to watch it multiple times. There's a lot of layers to it, and there's a lot of shades of meaning, and also the different cuts actually change the meaning of a lot of the things in it, depending on which version you're watching. If you're watching the final cut, that's always the best.
I watched the director's cut, I think.
Okay. The recent director's cut, or like the old one?
I'm guessing the recent one. I don't really know which one it was because I found it off of some shady app.
Okay. Yeah, because there's a director's cut that wasn't made by the director one bit, and then there's Ridley Scott's final cut, which is the most recent one. There's like 5 different cuts, and it's did it have the unicorn dream in it? Did it have the origami at the end?
Yep.
Okay. Then chances are you watched the
final cut.
The final cut, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting movie though, and I'm kind of wondering, like, watching it the second time, and more like watching all of the movie this time, I'm kind of amazed they're making a sequel, because I really don't see, other than what happens to Deckard and the other girl, I can't see the reason why they would make a sequel.
Well, I agree with you there. I guess from what I've seen, they have scenes on Mars, which I find very interesting, because they mention Mars in the movie, and the Mars is where the replicants escaped from. So I think bringing some light to the situation on Mars is pretty interesting. Hopefully they take it away from Earth to give it a whole new dimension of. Because you don't want the same movie being made, right? You want like the first one has some pretty profound like questions about life and purpose of life, and in robots in relation to humanity and artificial intelligence as well, and life in general, and how it's worth something. So like it has some really great questions there, but to ask all the same questions again and even to try to answer them is kind of a bad thing. You want the viewer to take something from it, right? To try to expound on and find their own answers, which is what makes it great. But let's see what they do. I mean, it's by the original team, so.
Yeah, so like that was my week. lots of jumping between games and movies. So, Old Man Stompy, why don't you take it away?
So, of course, I mentioned the last time I was on 2 weeks ago that I just started a new job. So I would like to talk about that for a little bit. But first, just to get out of the way, we do record this podcast on Sunday, meaning for the first time I'm recording this simultaneously with a WWF pay-per-view I would normally be watching. Today's pay-per-view is called...
We stole you from your woman.
From my second wife, after my actual wife. So the pay-per-view today is called Money in the Bank, and I think I've talked about this before, but it's a brilliant idea that they have in wrestling that would never work in any actual sport, which is why I love it so much. The idea is that the Money in the Bank match is for a briefcase containing a contract that says that you can cash this in whenever you want for a title shot of your choice. And usually what that means is after any arbitrary match between the current champion and their challenger, whoever wins, that means that, like, out of nowhere, the briefcase holder usually comes charging in and cashes in their match to whoever won that match, usually, like, dog-tired after wrestling a 30-minute match, cashes in, usually wins after, like, one finishing move, and becomes the new champion. And that threat is always hanging over your shoulder. And, like, that would never work in regular sports, because, like, imagine if, like, the last NBA Finals between the Cavaliers and the Warriors, imagine if, like, Tim Duncan had the briefcase after the Warriors won the title and said, we get to, have one jump ball. And if I take it, I get your NBA championship. Like, that would never work. That's incredibly stupid. But in wrestling, it's like the greatest thing.
Well, I find it particularly interesting because, supposedly you shouldn't be able to win a match with it, in that kind of state, right? You're exhausted.
Well,
by
yeah,
the end of the match,
it
right?
really depends. Like, sometimes the referee will like do everything under their power to prop the guy who's being challenged up and, like, just to make sure he can actually stand on 2 feet, which is not always a requirement. Sometimes the gimmick is that, like, Triple H or some, like, evil authority figure will, like, be in on it, so they'll, like, knock out the guy who just won the title. And then they'll call in the referee for a rigged match, basically, an obviously rigged match against the opponent who's not even conscious. That's how Daniel Bryan lost his first WWE championship. The special referee in that match was Triple H, and he immediately pedigreed Daniel Bryan, then called out Randy Orton, who was the current briefcase holder, to come in and claim the title. Like, Bryan was knocked out in storyline. So that's happened before too. It's definitely a heel move to cash in your Money in the Bank briefcase. Usually it means that whoever has the briefcase, if they're a face, they turn heel. The only example I can think of in recent memory was one of the Shield members, and he cashed it in as revenge. So that was a bit more of a face member, face activity. And John Cena had it once, and he didn't cash it in like that. He challenged his opponent. He informed him he would be cashing it in on a specific date. And required him to have that match. So he did it he did it in a very face way. So that match will probably take place close to the closing hours of us recording this podcast. So maybe I can slip it in at the end of Recon. But it's also usually really exciting because whoever wins the Money in the Bank briefcase is usually it's what they used to use the Intercontinental title for. They used to give somebody that, like they gave the Ultimate Warrior that a year before he challenged Hulk Hogan for the title. They gave the Macho Man the Intercontinental title. They used to use that as the signifier for, like, the next guy they were going to give a big main event push. So the Money in the Bank briefcase is like that new banner. So it's always interesting to see who gets to hold it, and I'm looking forward to finding out. There are a lot of interesting wrestlers in this year's Money in the Bank match, including Shinsuke Nakamura, their, like, latest import from Japan, who we've talked about before. Including Baron Corbin, who's this new rookie. He's like a lone wolf type. He's a heel, so he'll be a great fit for the briefcase. He's the odds-on favorite, so we'll see pretty soon who gets the briefcase and when they're going to cash it in. So
yeah, I would think that it would be a heel thing most of the time because it's an illegitimate win, essentially.
Yeah, it is. But again, like, a lot of the time, like, one of the biggest problems that a face has is that they have difficulty getting the heel to commit to a match, like an honest match. So the briefcase can be used as a tool to prevent the
fit. It's the Mayweather problem.
Yeah. Well, Mayweather, like, just needs a lot of money. Like, he's fighting Conor McGregor now, right? So
yeah, they're like special rules that Conor McGregor can't, like, use any of his advantages, like, because he knows a lot more different styles of fighting than Mayweather does. He only knows how to box.
Well, sure. So this goes back a long time. So I think in 1972, Muhammad Ali had an MMA match what was supposed to be an MMA match with Antonio Inoki, who was the Japanese professional wrestling like godfather. It was a huge closed circuit event. It was supposed to be like the original like fight of the century, because at that point Ali was in the middle of one of his title reigns, and to see like this guy who was basically like boxing's best pure knockout puncher, and like a strategist in the ring too, because I think this is after the rope-a-dope thing where he beat George Foreman. Yeah. So I mean, I might not have my dates right, but to have Muhammad Ali as like the greatest boxer who ever lived, most likely, take on Antonio Inoki, who was like the greatest Japanese wrestler who ever lived, in an MMA
it's like
match.
apples and oranges. It's apples and oranges. I mean, it's a style of fighting, but like you're one is completely limited in a set of skills,
right? So
versus another one which is much more freeform.
Yeah. So like the stories that came out of that, because this is back in the 70s before the internet, so like a lot of it is hearsay more so than it is these days. Like you don't have eyewitness accounts, you just have like stories that have been retold over time. Was that it was supposed to be like a professional wrestling match, because Inoki, he was a professional wrestler, but he was also a huge MMA buff, and he played a big part in MMA becoming large over in Japan. And it was like, it was supposed to be a fixed professional wrestling match, but it sounded like he wanted it to be a shoot fight, and he wanted to show off how good of a fighter was on national television against Muhammad Ali. And so like there was this tug of war going on for weeks leading up to the fight in terms of like what rules they would use for the fight and how they would like stop Inoki from doing something stupid and like leveraging MMA in a boxing match without getting because it would be really unsatisfying if he also got disqualified, right?
Sure.
That's not good television. So figuring out...
You want a knockout.
Yeah, you want a knockout. It turns out Muhammad Ali, they said he only threw like 6 punches in 12 rounds. And on top of that, like for some reason, I heard that, at least in the recounting, that like Inoki's like shoelaces like cut Muhammad Ali's legs open, and like it got infected, and it, like...
How does that even happen?
Like the little plastic knobs, the aglets, like cut... like he kept trying to kick. Like they had some rule where Inoki was only allowed to kick if he was on his back, meaning he couldn't get like a lot of leverage behind it. So he would go on his back and he would try to kick at Muhammad Ali's shins, and like his aglets like cut his legs open and they got infected. It like dramatically changed Ali's like fighting style for the rest of his life.
Wow. That's incredible. Like they must have been like metal or something, right?
I don't know. Like it's a wrestling match. It could have been anything. It sounds really dumb, but like what a weird thing to happen.
Wow.
So anyway, like I view this McGregor thing in the same vein. Like people are gonna watch because they really want to see McGregor knock the fuck out of Mayweather. Mayweather's like the biggest heel in actual wrestling, in actual boxing.
Nobody likes Mayweather.
Yeah, nobody likes Floyd Mayweather. He is
an
not,
asshole.
He is not. So in heel wrestling, like part of the goal is to keep the audience from seeing what you want to see, which is usually like a big flashy finishing move, or, you know, just the good guy winning. And Mayweather is like the antithesis of that. He's a defensive puncher. He clinches a lot. He's really good at avoiding knockout punches. Like, that's his strategy. I don't know.
He's not fun to watch.
Yeah, he's... he retired undefeated, and nobody really felt satisfied with any of his matches. Like, he retired with the feeling that nobody was ever going to get one up on him. And so now, like, McGregor is taking this one last shot to knock the fuck out of to knock Mayweather the fuck out. And, like, I don't think he's going to do it, but, and like, certainly Mayweather's not going to take money to get punched, you know? Like...
I think he has a better shot than Pacquiao, because Pacquiao's was a different class than
Mayweather, but I mean, Pacquiao looked like he went on something. He looked juiced, like, in that last fight. It was a little weird.
Yeah, but he's fallen out of favor too. He's a bit of a heel himself now. So,
yeah.
He put his foot in his mouth recently.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken,
about social issues.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, McGregor went up a weight class recently too, right? He used to wrestle. He used to fight at 145. So, and the first time he actually fought a real athlete, Nate Diaz, at 170, like, he had a lot of trouble. So, like, we'll see how this goes. My mom is a big Conor McGregor fan. So I don't really watch UFC, but I know a lot about it just because she and my brother-in-law watch a lot of this stuff. Anyway, other than that, I didn't play a lot of games. I know I talked about Final Fantasy 14, but because of the job, I haven't had many opportunities to play it. I'm also moving into a new apartment, not really an apartment, the lower floor of a house in upstate New Jersey. So that's taken a lot of my evenings. So basically, in the morning, I wake up, I go to work, I come back from work, I go down to I take the train down to our new house, and then I help my wife paint for a while, and then I go to sleep. So there was like one day.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's adult life. Yeah.
Yes, Pyro knows this. I'm looking at his bedroom right now, nicely painted, which I know. The last time I went to his house, he explained to me how how they did that, and like how they chose that design. So that was cool. So he knows this life. I did go to round 1 with Mr. Ryu today. That was impromptu.
What did you guys play?
I mean, I always play DDR. I didn't do too much else.
Sure.
I got 3 new AAAs, so I'm at 679 now, crawling towards 700. That's exciting for me. Not really so much for anybody else. But obviously the last thing I did was I started a new job. I work for Capital One. I am a data engineer, which basically means a software engineer, specifically working on problems dealing with like large data sets. So one of the first things I did was actually listen to another podcast called Lambda Cast. It's a programming-styled podcast. It talks about what's called the functional programming paradigm, which is a class of programming that deals specifically with like big data problems. And I was listening to it partially for that, but also because I was interested in what other people do on podcasts and if I could learn any lessons from that for like the podcasts that we do. And I remember the model being that like in the first episode, they brought on like 2 guys who were really familiar with this functional programming and one guy who was like a total neophyte. And the idea was when they launched this podcast that these 2 guys would talk about programming and teach it and they would be the experts, and the other guy would like ask a lot of questions, and like something would come up, and he was supposed to be like the audience surrogate for the podcast. But what actually happened is that he basically just said nothing for the entire hour of the podcast. So if there's ever,
because he had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, so if there's ever a time when you listen to us and like 2 of us are talking and one of us is quiet, like it's really hard. It turns out it's really hard to have a conversation between 3 people, like when each one of us talks about our specialties, and these things might not necessarily like have hooks for the other 2 of us to get into the conversation. And it was really gratifying to know, listening to this podcast, that problem isn't unique to us. It's just a natural human conversational thing.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
it's one of those things that happens. You know, it's just the nature of the way you have to do these things.
Yep. So otherwise, I am enjoying the work. I am enjoying learning a lot about production level software engineering, because God knows when I was in physics, like nobody was really overseeing the deployment of code. Like we all just wrote patchwork stuff and stuck it all together.
What language or languages do you use?
Do
you use R?
I have not used R in a really long time.
Okay.
I don't think anybody uses R in. So for people unfamiliar, R is a language which is optimized for statistical analysis. It's somewhat antiquated at this point because there's a module for Python that behaves very similarly to R. At least,
I mean, I think when I was looking at jobs, not recently, but before I got this job with the DOE, I was looking at data analysis jobs, and surprisingly, a lot of them still required knowledge of R, when I felt like you could just probably do the same stuff probably easier in Python.
Right. So I will say,
if you go to an interview, like probably the HR people are asking for that, but if you go into an interview, the people that are running the show will feel the same way you did. You know,
so,
they'll probably
or at least they won't care about what language you know, but the things you know.
Correct. Yeah.
So I have noticed that the issue with that is that it doesn't match up well with the skills the job is actually looking for. Like I have a strong C++ background from physics, and a lot of jobs post they want someone who has a lot of experience in what they call an object-oriented language akin to C++, which could be anything, but C++ they know will be the most common thing they'll see on resumes. And what they really mean is they want someone who can program in an object-oriented language like C++, but they don't really want a C++ programmer, which means that if they're going to ask you to do something on the interview, you really have to nail it, because that's not why they're hiring you. Like, they're hiring you not for your programming skills, but for your thinking ability, usually. They want to know that you can think about a problem and then translate that to whatever problem they're trying to solve over at their job.
That's what Google's interviews are like. You know, they just have problems for you to solve.
Yeah,
and puzzles and stuff.
Yeah, it's weird. Like a lot of tech companies have adopted the like brain teaser style of interviewing, and I'm not sure. Like it tends to sort of like if the interviewer is particularly lazy, it tends to sort of bias you towards people who can memorize methods in code a lot and like. or call them off the top of their head, because a lot of the time, if you don't at the end write something that compiles and runs, even if your algorithm is like perfect and you're brilliant, like you just won't get hired, and it's kind of unfortunate.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
It's just because like we have the internet. I think one of my best professors in college when I was going for computer science, on the final, he's like, open your books, use them, just know that you have an hour to complete this or whatever it was, because when you're on the job, you're going to have a time limit and you'll have all the resources available to you, but you need to be able to use them to finish what you need to finish in the time you have.
Right. And on top of that, like when you're actually programming, these days everybody uses what's called an IDE. It was basically a development environment.
Which auto enters code for you.
Auto completes everything. It links your functions between each other, so you can like go back to other code in case you forgot what it does. The big thing is completing parentheses for you, so you never wind up with an unclosed parentheses. And
I'm sure it also makes it a lot easier for other people to read your code too and understand what you're doing with it.
Yes and no. It still depends on how good you are at writing comments and how.
Gotcha.
You'd be surprised. I had my students, when I was teaching CS, use an IDE, and there was some shitty code that I got, but that was because
students,
they're students.
But
so that's a little bit different.
In the general sense, it does do really simple things like color code things, so that it's easier to read than just opening it up in a terminal and like trying to decipher it on your own merits.
Sure.
The one thing I do like. So there's two final notes I'll make about this. One is that the CEO of Capital One is named Rich Fairbank, which is the greatest name for a guy in charge of a banking company. So
it sounds like a 1950s cartoon, like CEO.
Yes, I thought about that specifically because I know like DuckTales is getting a reboot, and he would fit really well with like Scrooge McDuck and Flintheart Glomgold, and apparently there's a new like tech billionaire character, a new duck, who they're adding to the roster. So
that reminds me, I just ordered the Carl Barks treasury of like the first Uncle Scrooge comics.
Nice.
So I'm really excited to get those and read that, because I've been hearing a lot of buzz on how the original Duck comics by Carl Barks were like really great. I mean, they inspired a lot of things, including things like Indiana Jones. So
yes,
I'm excited.
And that happened recursively too, right? Because the first DuckTales like theatrical movie was based off of Raiders of the Lost Ark, or like the name of it was anyway.
Well, not only that, but like even the font for DuckTales is a directly copied font of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So,
all right. So anyway, the only other note I would make is that it turns out that part of what I enjoyed during the interview was that one of the interviewers told me that they have this hackathon with local school kids, where they go to like middle schools and teach them how to code, and I thought that was really interesting.
That is really cool.
Yeah, just because of how they do it now. Like when I take a programming course, like in college or in high school, they really go down to the lowest level. They teach you like what's a for loop, like what's an if statement, like how to write a main for your program, which like isn't necessarily. It's like learning a language. Because it is
learning
a
a
programming language. Like if you go take Spanish in high school, like a lot of the time you forget like 90% of what you learned, unless you actually go talk to people who speak Spanish, or you have a buddy you speak to all the time. Like you forget it. That's not like a way to learn a language, or at least to retain it. It's better. It's much easier to retain something you learned if you're using it. So in the same vein, it's hard to learn programming unless you have a project in mind and you're continually reinforcing what you learned. And in programming, it's particularly pernicious because a lot of languages, like, as opposed to spoken languages, which diverge from each other substantially, programming languages often use like very similar syntax and a lot of the same methods. They're just like subtly different in certain ways. Like some of them have different kinds of parentheses. Some of them, like C++, always has a semicolon at the end of every line to show that that's the end of an execution statement. But most other modern languages don't, so like that can trip you up. Like little differences like that. So you like really have to be continually programming in that language to remember it. So what they give these kids is what's called block programming. I don't know, Iro, I know you've run hackathons. I don't know if you've run into this kind of thing before. where instead of writing code line by line, you have these blocks, and like you just specify the input and the output, and the block like generates the code for you.
When we push this to schools, we usually push them to start with block languages because it's a lot easier to start learning it with that.
Yeah. So instead of learning like the base, like someone I know likened it to learning how to build Lego by teaching someone like what blue blocks are and what red blocks are. That's how like a regular college course goes. But like it's more efficient just to give people the blocks and let them build something and then ask about the modifications later. So I think that's really effective. So these kids, they write apps, and I think it's called DF App. It's something written by MIT. It's called like the MIT App,
App Inventor.
App Inventor, yeah. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, App Inventor too. I've used it before.
Okay.
It's hard for newbies, but it allows you to do a lot, like with making phone apps in a really short amount of time.
Well, I mean, they gave it to 13-year-old kids and they did okay with it. They had mentors, but still, like the kids managed everything on their own. One of the kids actually made like Pokemon. I was pretty impressed by that one. They didn't win the hackathon, but I thought it was really impressive. Like they were walking around Lavender Town and like Pokemon would spawn.
Oh, neat.
It's pretty cool. So
cool.
So yeah, that's my week. I haven't participated in that yet. The last session ended the first week that I was on the job. But I'm excited to participate in that. And
this goes on in Manhattan?
Yes.
Let me know the next time. I'd like to check it out too.
Sure. I'll let you know. Otherwise, I would look forward to. I'm looking forward to work, which I haven't in a while. So I mean, I haven't been employed since last January. So so this is nice. I have less time for video games, but I feel like I did something when I go to bed at night. So that was my week. Aside from last night when I went over to Vice's house for the first time. So why don't you tell us about that? Because it's the punctuation mark for your week too.
Yeah. That was pretty much the only video game playing that I did. So the big lead up to this was that the reason why I wanted to have everybody over is I was getting close to getting my living room all set up the way I wanted it. And for long-time listeners, the big challenge is that I have a lot of components. In particular, I have a lot of old video game systems. I have all kinds of switchers. I have my a gaming PC hooked up to my television, and things like that. So I was finally getting to a point where I have everything set up, and so I wanted to have everybody over when I was able to have everything all set up. Unfortunately, I was able to stage everything, which was good. I was able to get the systems where I wanted them, but threading wires through an entertainment center is a lot longer task than you think it should be. It takes a long time, especially if you have a lot of them and you want to keep organized while doing it. And plus I had all my stuff all in different bags and things like that. It wasn't organized well when I moved because I kind of moved in a hurry. So everything was all jumbled up, so I had to decipher what everything was and all that stuff and what AC adapters went to what and things like that. But I was able to set up the television and stage everything and also hook up the Switch and my PC to it, and as well as yesterday was the first time I ever got to test out the speakers that I had just bought for my living room.
How'd they work?
They sounded great. In fact, we listened to a lot of music. I think in particular before Old Man Stompy stopped by, but we listened to quite a bit of music, and they sound great. They have a lot of clarity to them. I'm not disappointed in the slightest. I bought some ELAC bookshelf speakers that are supposed to be really, really great for their price range. I bought a pair for $280, and apparently they far outclass anything in that price range.
Nice.
So I was happy to get them. They have good low and high range, and they've made the video games and music sound great. So I was really happy about that. And I obviously got the receiver set up for that. So that was actually the major part that made everything so hard, because I needed to build shelves on either side of the the television, and I had an old shelf and one that I had just bought, so like they didn't match up in the shelf size. So I kind of needed to. I kind of figured out a makeshift solution. So everything was good, but ended up having a really good time last night. We played ARMS, which also just came out on Friday. So I had a really good time playing ARMS. What did you think about it, Old Man Stompy?
I only played about 4 or 5 matches. I lost every single one. I'm not good at fighting games, so my experience is tainted by being terrible at the game. But I did have a lot of fun, and it has a lot of my this included losing to my wife twice. So she clearly wears the arms in our relationship.
So my question about ARMS is, I played the only time I played Splatoon was at Old Man Stompy's previous place, and I thought it was really fun. It was like a very Nintendo-y third-person shooter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if ARMS actually has something going for it, or if it's just like, I guess what I'm saying is Splatoon has a lot. There's like 2 or 3 different modes. There's a lot of different weapons you can choose. Is ARMS more than just 2 people punching each other?
Yeah, so I could talk to that. So first of all, what you have to realize what you're playing. You're playing a one-on-one third-person fighting game that has range to it. So it's similar to, let's say, Virtual On or Custom Robo, in that you have an arena and you have 2 people going around trying to fight each other and trying to avoid the obstacles in the arena, and also, pick up power-ups as they get placed in the arena, things like that. You can also customize your fighter at the beginning of the match, which is cool. They give you three different types of arms to start with for each character.
Do the arms do something different, or do they just look different?
No, they're all different. So some of the arms have multiple extensions that come out of them. So like you'll punch, and then 3 of them will come out, and they'll have the chance of hitting. They'll have the chance of hitting somebody who's far away from you a lot easier. But they're weaker. But if all 3 things hit them, then you get like a really powerful hit. You'll have certain ones that are certain arms that are slower, but will curve and will be hard to block, let's say. You'll have ones that are defensive, too, depending on the character you're using. Each character has different arms available to them as well. And you can unlock more arms as time goes on, too. So it's pretty customizable. It has a really great style. All the characters have a lot of personality and are unique. But I will point out that they are very Overwatchy. Nintendo definitely.
Well, I think it's more just that cartoony style that a lot of games are going for now.
Yeah, but they use a lot of the similar archetypes. Is what I'm saying. They have like a girl that's in a mech suit, that kind of thing. Not that that's something that's totally out of left field, but I definitely know that they took some inspiration from what people liked about the ensemble cast of other games, for sure. But it's a fun game. I wouldn't play it with motion controls. It's not nearly as fun. You'd think it would be pretty fun, and it is, but not for high-level play, just like anything else, really. But it's good that Nintendo gives you a lot of options to play it otherwise. And there's also going to be a free DLC character coming out very soon, which is the boss of the game, which is pretty neat. So overall, I really like it. The other modes are actually probably the best part. So there's a volleyball mode. There is a basketball mode, which I think is actually the best mode. You essentially have to knock out or knock over your opponent and get them to basically topple and go into like onto one of these bounce boards, and they turn into the ball and go into a hoop. You can also like use the grab function to dunk them, which is a lot of fun. So we also ran through the story mode, which was pretty cool too. So I would say that it's really cool that they included a lot of different modes. It's not just like a one-trick pony kind of deal, and it's very visually appealing. It's a beautiful game. So we also had an opportunity to play Bomberman R, and I had quite a bit of fun playing that version of Bomberman. We played 6-player Bomberman.
Yeah, I remember we played that 4-player or something like that last time I was over your place.
We played 6-player, and with Revenge Ghosts, it was a lot of fun. I liked it. I don't know about you, Old Man Stompy, but
yeah, I will say that playing with Revenge Ghosts on at the end of the match when there are 4 Revenge Ghosts hunting 2 players is pretty intense.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I mean, it's not like a tournament style game. There's a lot of luck involved.
The one thing that like really frustrated me about the revenge thing was that, and I know Mr. Ryu took advantage of this because that's his style. So the revenge ghosts have like a specific range, like a fixed range for their throws, and I don't think they have any fire power ups. Meaning that if you just sit in the corner, like none of the ghosts can hit you, and also the other player can't get to you. Yes. Or because they would never bother because you're being attacked by 4 ghosts. So it means that like the game just devolves into that until you hit the timeout.
Somebody makes a mistake.
Well, you hit the sudden death eventually, and then the ghosts go away.
Yeah. Good game of Bomberman. I don't have much criticism against it. There's some rumblings of people that don't, some Bomberman fans that don't like it, and I just don't understand it. I've been playing Bomberman for years. And
from what I played, and I'm a huge Bomberman fan, I didn't see any problems with it. I didn't play the story. That might be where some problems are, but usually the story is the most fun, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe that might be the criticism, is maybe the story isn't as good as like Saturn Bomberman or Bomberman Hero. Maybe that's what they're calling back to. But the multiplayer is a good multiplayer version of Bomberman. There's like no major problems. And there are a lot of options you could pick. So I really don't have a problem with it. Also, we played Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which is just as fun as it always is. Bomberman's great. Mario Kart's great, and this version of Mario Kart is one of the most accessible. Really, a lot of fun. We had a blast doing that. I don't really have much to say to that because I've talked about it before, but we played it. It was fun.
Yeah, we karted. We sure did.
Yeah. I did want to mention a couple other things. We also listened to some vinyls last night as well, which I was happy. I was able to bring the old record player from my grandparents' house to my apartment, which is a combination record player and 8-track player, and it has its own speakers and everything. And we had a lot of fun just playing all kinds of different records. Like we played everything from Rolling Stones to the Scott Pilgrim soundtrack. Busted out some of the video game vinyls. We even listened to the new Gorillaz album, Humans, while we were doing that, and we had a blast. I mean, it's a really great party thing. It's a little bit more interactive, and it's just more fun than just like hooking up a let's say an MP3 player to the receiver.
It's important because somewhere around 11 o'clock last night, I'd officially heard Vice's vinyl collection more than I'd heard Vice talk about his vinyl collection.
So it was really cool, and I was glad that people were into it, which is what I was hoping. People were enjoying picking out records to play and looking at the record player and using it and having fun with it. So, and looking at the different album art and stuff like that. I did want to mention a couple things that I bought. Recently, Dejika Games, who has been the publisher of quite a lot of Japanese shmups for Steam, has they're the ones that have been publishing cave games on Steam that were originally just on the Xbox 360. They published Castle of Shikigami 1, which came to the United States horribly butchered as Mobile Light Force 2. So there was this game company called Exis Games, which specialized in getting import games very cheaply and localizing them in the worst way possible. Like completely stripping the games of their personality, either not translating things or translating them terribly, and then renaming them or giving them the worst kinds of box art. And you wouldn't even know that you were playing a good game unless you knew exactly what you were buying. Just to give you for instance, Mobile Light Force 1 has nothing to do with Castle Shikigami. Mobile Light Force 1 was actually a game called Gunbird, which was a Sikio game. And so they localized one game from one series and a totally different company, and then they came up with a sequel, in quotes, that had nothing to do with it. They localized a total different game and made it into a sequel. And they later localized the sequel to that, Castle of Shikigami 2, as and it quite possibly has the most and worst voice acting of any video game that I've ever heard. That's
saying something too. You've played a lot of video games, and there are a lot of really bad voice acted video games.
Yeah, in fact, it's pretty legendary. It's up there with Last Alert, which is a really, really great, terrible thing to play for your friends. It's a PC or a TurboGrafx CD game that was localized very terribly, and it sounds like it was recorded in a basement. But you'll be shocked by just like the sheer amount of terrible dialogue that was recorded for that game. Like, why did they even bother? It's just really incredible. And for a shmup to have that much dialogue is really incredible. And all of it is incoherent. You'll be sitting there for like 5 minutes on end of characters yammering, and you'll have no idea what they were trying to say to each other.
Fun.
It's pretty fantastic. But anyway, it's good to get a straight localized version of the original game on a modern system. You know, the original Castle Shikigami 1 was a PS2 game, so it's really good to finally get that, and hopefully the sequel. Castle Shikigami 2 is probably the best one in the series, if you ask me. It has a really good grazing mechanic, which is where you fly close to bullets, but not close enough where they hit you. But you rack up
close
points.
Enough where you graze them.
Exactly. So the grazing mechanic increases your score. The closer you are to other bullets. So you end up basically tracing the path of the bullets that are attacking you. So really cool that they brought it over. I bought that. I pre-ordered Valkyria Revolution as well, which is a Valkyria Chronicles spin-off.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Yeah, I hope it's not. It's very tropey from what I've seen so far.
That's fine. I'm okay with tropey games,
but
especially games like that.
I hope it's good. It's a spin-off, so it's not part of the main series. So
I mean, we've only gotten one of the main series anyway, so it's not like we really know what's going on in the story anyway. That's
true, and the third one is supposedly really good. It's a big shame that we never got it officially anyway. So anyway, that's pretty much it for this week. So I'm gonna move on to the weigh-in. I have been really bad at weighing myself the last couple weeks. I can tell you that I haven't been happy with. I've gained weight over the last couple weeks, and this week I took another stab at really reining in my habits, and I've been a lot better overall. So hopefully, in the weeks coming, I will have some good news. But I hope to be back down to 225 very soon. I don't know where I'm at, to be completely honest. I should be weighing myself, but I haven't been. And I'm glad to have this podcast as my reminder to do it.
I actually I weighed myself on your scale while I was at your place. Unless you have a different scale that isn't going in the bathroom.
No, that's it.
Nice, the legendary weigh-in scale.
What's good about it is it also syncs up with an app on your phone too for keeping track, and I haven't been good about it because to be honest, with this kind of thing, there's a lot of shame and things involved in weighing yourself and failing by gaining. So it's a psychological thing, especially for me. So I'm sure like a lot of other people that are working on things like that can identify. So I just want to let people know that I'm going through the same kind of thing they go through. But I constantly want to remind myself that I need to start weighing myself more often, probably twice a week. If you do it more than that, that's not a good indicator, so I don't want to do that, but I want to come back to it. So anyway, we have a question here from the Full Arcana. I recently caught up on the JoJo anime and love the ending songs. That would be like Walk Like an Egyptian and Roundabout by Yes. I was wondering if anybody thinks that this is the best use of what everyone thinks is the best use of licensed music in TV series, movie, etc. Great episode. So I can immediately say that I love the Guardians of the Galaxy's use.
That was the only thing that I was going to say. I can't think of anything else.
Oh, in particular, those movies have made it a part of the story rather than just having it as a mood setting for for what's going on. You know, you have things like Suicide Squad where they basically just picked songs that they thought in other they basically mirrored other movies and were like, well, this scene's kind of like this and from another old classic movie. Let's remind people of that and put this in here to kind of just jazz it up, and it really doesn't have any meaning behind it. You know, it doesn't mean anything to the characters. It doesn't mean anything that's going on or anything. It just has these classic 70s songs that were used in wartime movies and stuff like that. And really doesn't have any bearing at all on the plot. And it's honestly pretty lazy. But you have something like Guardians of the Galaxy where, even a specific song in the second movie is of particular significance to the entire theme of the movie. And I think that was really great writing. And very surprising how good the writing was. And the character's whole memory of home hinges on the tapes that he has of the music that his mom used to listen to, and so I think that's a really good example, especially a recent one.
I'm going to take this in a wrestling direction, which is my idiom, and I'm going to pick a couple of. There are a few instances where WWF guys use licensed music as their entrance. Usually they use entrance music written by either their old composer, I think his name's Jim Johnston, or the new team they've hired since he's getting a little bit old. These guys by the name of CFO. They're the ones who made Shinsuke Nakamura's theme song, which we've talked about a little bit before, which I think is currently the most popular theme song on the WWE Music app. So they're both very talented. But rarely they use actual licensed music as a wrestler's entrance, and it's usually a pretty big deal because it costs them a lot of money to play that every single house show and every single televised program. So CM Punk, I know Vice is a big fan of CM Punk. When he won the WWE title for the first time, he changed his theme song to "Cult of Personality" by Living Colour, which really perfectly captures what his character is all about. It's a great entrance for him. And the moment when he came out to that for the first time was at the culmination of his storyline that also resulted in the last 5-star match the WWF ever had about 6 years ago. So that was a fantastic moment to have him come out to Cult of Personality. First off, because it was a new theme song, nobody knew who was going to come out, right? Nobody had ever heard that before, and the entrance music is one of the most important parts of a wrestler's entrance. So to have that start playing and then have CM Punk walk out in a very understated entrance. He didn't do any poses or anything. He just walked out on the stage and basked in the adulation of the crowd that was really thrilled to see him back after he'd been off of TV for about a week.
That's really cool because then you really know you have a personality there.
Yeah.
You really have somebody who earned it.
And it also means that, we talked about before how CM Punk was always perceived as an underdog who managed to become champion anyway. But for the WWF to go out and pay for the rights for this song meant that they also believed in him to some extent, which is also a pretty big deal.
Absolutely. Well, they had to write him winning too. It's not like
but sometimes they do that and then they just drop the title the next day on the television show. That doesn't mean that they're pushing them. It just means that they were giving them that moment.
Yeah.
I don't have a serious answer because Vice stole my answer about Guardians of the Galaxy, so I'll say that my answer is going to be the use of Stand By Me in the opening of Final Fantasy 15.
Okay, that's
Oh,
great
yeah.
though.
That is really good. No, I could go with that one. So I think that's the polar opposite of the like the polar opposite of my example with Suicide Squad, right? You pick something that inspires or is supposed to call back to something that means something thematically to what's going on. So in that one, it's all about friendship, and so it's Stand By Me, the movie, right?
Yeah.
Stand By Me was a song before, it was a movie, but people are automatically going to think about the movie, and that's what they're calling back to with this. You have 4 friends, right, going on a road trip, away from home. So it's very much calling back to the movie rather than the song specifically.
Yeah, I mean, it's important the way it plays, right? Because the game opens by like these 4 guys driving in the car, and the car breaks down. And the game actually opens with them pushing the car while the song plays, and it's a really it's a strong statement by the director because it says, you think that the most important part of this game is going to be about these 4 guys going on an adventure like every other Final Fantasy game. No, it's actually about these 4 guys doing a lot of mundane shit together, and like getting to know each other
because they're friends.
Yeah,
yeah, I love that. Whereas like Suicide Squad is just like, I don't know, what are we gonna put here? Well, this will go. It's a fine line, I guess, but references are important, especially when one had a lot of thought put behind it and the other one didn't. That was a very specific callback because they wanted you to remember what that movie was like and the themes in it. And feeling for these characters and their friendship, and you take something that probably shouldn't have anything in common, really. You have a fantasy video game, that has its own lineage of references and things, and then you kind of marry them together, and you're like, wait a second, no, there is something behind this one. So I think you chose a really good one there, Pyro.
Good job. You get to
Yay.
another week.
That means we'll kick off Old Man Stumpy for the next episode.
Too bad. Too bad. There's no pay-per-view next week. I'll just have to sit in my room and stare at the wall, which I painted, so it'll look really nice.
Watch it dry.
Be sure to close the windows. That way, you see all the pink elephants.
I see.
But anyway,
Yeah.
that's the show for this week. We want to thank all of our fans that contributed questions, and please keep us supplied with awesome topics by submitting questions of your own via the YouTube and Soundcloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs up, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. Helps us promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Thursdays on our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the in-depth look at this week in pop culture. Finally, you can find me as Vise the Bold, VYSETHEBOLD, on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, and Twitter. I will also take this opportunity to tell people, I'll make a quick plug here, to please consider joining Lotus Prince's Patreon. He has been working on a lot of Patreon exclusive content. He puts in a lot of thought to all of his solo projects as well as this project of ours, this collaborative one. So please support him, even if you just want to give a small amount. He greatly appreciates it. He's very, very appreciative of anybody who helps him out, and we are too. Thank you.
And you can look for me as either Pyrojack Frost or Cloud08540 on various gaming media. I may or may not accept any requests, but you're free to play games with me or say what's up.
And you can find me as Old Man Stompy basically everywhere except on Steam. Now that I've moved into this new apartment, this is the first time in about 15 years I had all my gaming consoles and my PC in the same room. So I'm looking forward to getting back into gaming in basically every way. So feel free to look me up.
Awesome. So, having said that, with my new setup getting close to completion, I believe I will attempt streaming sometime soon. I'm not committing to a date quite yet, but I hope to do it on Twitch and YouTube very soon.
Nice.
So thanks everyone, and we will catch you on Thursday on Reactive.
Peace.
Cheers.